Look at that. Juicy, crispy, light and fluffy. I'm gonna show you how to make tonkatsu 2 ways, 2 different cuts with 1 secret ingredient. This is the best tonkatsu. So whether you want like a classic tonkatsu with pork loin, which is a little bit leaner, or you want to go for a really larger than life tonkatsu made from pork shoulder that's super fatty and juicy, we're going to show you 2 approaches to the best tonkatsu. Our secret ingredient isn't quite actually a secret. What makes tonkatsu super special is the use of nama panko. Here we're using shokupan, Japanese milk bread, because of how tender, how fluffy it is, how sweet at the same time. That's what's going to lend to this fresh, airy, crispy texture. So though you might be used to seeing this with store-bought panko, this is going to deliver so much more texture, so much layers of breading on top of the meat and stuff. So it's better texture. It's going to be even better than using dried panko. So if you're not able to find this, you can use store-bought white bread. But at the end of the day, nama panko is how classic tonkatsu is made, and that's our secret ingredient that's going to make this really special, even if you're making the ultimate or the classic done right. I'm gonna show you how to make it. Let's get into it. So first thing, we're gonna remove the crust. Why? Because it's gonna help make sure that all of our nama panko is very tender and consistent. From here, we're just gonna cut this down into planks that will fit nicely into our food processor. Lastly, I'm gonna cut these in half, just because it's gonna fit into my bag nicely for freezing. All that's really important here is you just wanna make sure it's sealed up really well. Time to start flaking, shaving, making our nama panko. Our bread is completely frozen. You can see it's like rock hard now. It's a lot easier to work with and shave. You know, before it was in there, it's just super tender and fluffy. This is gonna really mash up your panko. Frozen is gonna shave really light and fluffy. We're using a special attachment. I call it a mandolin attachment. It's actually called a slicer attachment. What I like about this is you can adjust the setting thickness that you want. We're setting it to a 1/16 of an inch. This is gonna give us really nice shavings of the bread. I'm gonna spread this out on a half sheet pan. This is exactly what you're looking for here. This is not like how you've seen panko before. So it's super tender in this state. Through moving around, every time you touch it, these beautiful lacy slices of fresh bread will break apart. So we kind of want to preserve that. So while it's still cold like this, while all the moisture is still trapped in there, we're gonna bag it up. I like to have a damp towel. We're gonna pop it in here. This is gonna add a little extra moisture, just a little bit. So as of right now, this nama panko is ready to go, ready to fry up. The longer you hold on to it, the texture and quality of it will deteriorate. So best use this fresh, store in the fridge or freezer for 3 to 5 months. So there isn't one specific cut always used for tonkatsu. In shops, you can select the pig, the farm, the part of the pig it comes from. There's like a whole tasting that happens with all different parts. So let's talk about 2 cuts here. The pork loin, it's leaner. It's a really nice shape for pounding and having a beautifully sized cutlet. So it'll be super juicy, but it'll be a little bit more on the leaner side. Over here, the ultimate is pork collar. The pork collar itself comes from the neck end of the shoulder. To me, this is like the best cut on a pig if you're looking for something to be super tender, super juicy, very rich and fatty. So this is a great cut that we're gonna be tenderizing through time and temperature and sous vide. So tenderization is a little bit different. We're gonna be tenderizing the loin by pounding it out, and then we're gonna be tenderizing the collar by sous vide. From there, they're gonna be processed and they're gonna kind of converge back for the same breading process and frying with just slight variations that I'll run through. But from here, we're gonna take the classic and pound it out and get it ready for frying. All right, so we got our station set up here. We got our 4 boneless 1-inch cut pork chops. We got our scale that's gonna help us out with scaling our salt. And here we have a Ziploc bag. Starting off on each of the sides of the bag, trim it away. So now that our bag's ready, we're gonna set that aside. I like to score the top of the pork chops about 2 inches apart. I just like to cut through that cap, because otherwise, if you don't cut those, this whole thing might curl up in the fryer. But here, they're nicely separated apart. It'll help it fry real flat. So at this point, if you purchased your pork chops in a package at the grocery store, you probably have the weight of them written on the package. So you might know the starting weight of these, but if you don't, I like to just record that weight before I get too far into the pounding. That weight is gonna help us know the exact amount of salt we're gonna use. We use 1% salt to the total weight of pork. We're gonna measure out 1% salt. But for pounding it, open up your Ziploc here, grab one of your chops, place it down in the middle, close it up. These are 1-inch chops. We're trying to pound it out to a 1/2 inch. So you can grab a ruler if you want, but here, just trying to dial in our thickness. We're looking for just about a 1/2 inch. So you might have some spots like I'm seeing over here on the fat. It's a little high. All you have to do, pounded that out a little thinner, just about a 1/2 inch. Now we have our beautiful looking thin 1/2 inch pork chop. Rinse and repeat. So from here, the salt. So dry brining's nice is because we're gonna season it and we're gonna allow it to sit in the fridge for 1 hour and come back to it later. For the pork shoulder, with how tough this cut is, sous vide is gonna be how we're gonna tenderize it. Take your tray, your plate with your pork, put it on your scale, tear it to 0, pop this into your heavy duty bag, Ziploc freezer bag. That tells me the weight of the pork, and then I just need to measure out a 0.5% salt to the weight of the pork. In dry brining, a lot of time you're drying the surface of the meat, but I like to add salt to the bag because it's gonna create a bag brine. So while its juices come out, that's all mixed with it, and it's just gonna jumpstart the seasoning process. All right, so instead of pounding it, tenderizing it, we're using sous vide, time and temperature to make this super succulent and juicy. It's 3 temperature options. 60, my favorite for steaky yet tender. More tender, 65. Going all the way up to 70. 70s for converging on braisy. So 3 options. All these cook for 16 hours. Choose the one that works for you, but 60C's my go-to. After 16 hours of cooking, this wild cut of pork is looking even gnarlier now. This is just the process of it tenderizing. All that collagen is converted to gelatin, and it is very tender now. It's gonna cut up beautifully to steak. So chill it. Reason for chilling is it's gonna firm up nicely, allowing us to get really, really clean portions. This is gonna chill for, say, minimum 2 hours. About 4 hours is ideal again for this to chill all the way through to set up the fat. Then we're gonna portion beautiful steaks. So at this point, the pork collar is cooked, chilled, it is firm. But now we are ready to portion. Portioning this while it's cold is gonna be much easier. So you can portion this however you want. You could do nice big cubes if you want. You could cut it back into 1-inch pork chops. I wanna cut it into nice thick 2-inch chops here. Squaring off the end is gonna help us get those nice, beautiful portions. The ruler, you can eyeball it. It's gonna get some nice 2-inch portions. So I would say that is a beautiful looking pork chop. Nice rosy color, really, really well marbled. You can see all that fat. This is a thick bad boy. This would definitely serve too, but it'll be really nice frying it up this way because we'll get beautiful thick slices of tonkatsu. So both of these, the classic, the loin, tenderized through pounding, the ultimate, the collar, tenderized through sous vide, and both of these are ready to be breaded and fried. We need to reheat our chops. So these chops have been cooked at 60 degrees C. To reheat it without running the risk of overcooking, I like to set the bath 5 degrees lower. So got our bath reheated to 55 C. We're gonna take these chops, bag them up. Reheating sous vide is critical for actually serving up warm, tender, juicy, instead of cold in the middle, crispy on the outside. Nobody really wants that. There we go, pop it in. It's just as a general rule, and this is an oversimplification of reheating sous vide. If it's 1 inch thick, about an hour is gonna be enough. 2 inches, about 2 hours is gonna be enough. Because we're not trying to hit an exact core temperature of 55 degrees, we're just trying to get these warm again. That applies for about 2 inches. Once you go beyond that, it's a whole nother can of worms. So 2 hours, reheat, we're gonna bread and fry. Breading station. What I like to have on one side is the flour, because that's gonna be the first part of the dredging. This is where the pork is gonna go into first. And then the eggs here. 3-stage breading, can't do it without them. Just beat it well, use a fine mesh sieve, strain it. Then we have our nama panko. And last, just a rack set up on a tray. That way when it comes out being all nice and crispy, it's elevated still, allowing that fat to drain. In tonkatsu shops, a big part of the process is frying, obviously. They're using these giant vats, and those are also designed in a way where there's screens on it. There's a lot of really delicate breadcrumbs on the bottom side. You don't want to compress those down. You want to give them room to be really crispy and lacy still. At home, I like to emulate a restaurant style setup using a trivet, a small steam insert, make sure it's free of water. Just take it and plop it in.
So we are ready to bread and fry our pork collards. So we're just gonna transfer them to a paper towel to pat dry.
Make a little bed with your nama panko for the pork. We're gonna go right into the flour. The flour I like to use for this is 00 Caputo flour. This fine grind of flour is gonna really adhere to the surface of the pork well. Be a nice, really fine finish coating on it. Hold it for about 5 seconds. Boom, right into the nama panko. Pack it on. Again, think of it like snow. You're packing a snowball here. And we're just gonna gently lower it in parallel with the oil. Set your timer, 90 seconds.
Difference in frying this time around is gonna be a shorter fry. It's just about the crust here. It's not about cooking the meat. So our temperature has been raised a little bit.
It's gonna eat really nice. Oh, there we go. That is looking beautiful. Still warm inside. Temperature hasn't actually risen internally in this pork chop, just below the surface. So we fried just the outside. It's looking great. I'm gonna fry some classic tonkatsu. From here, we're gonna move it into the flour first. Give it a flip. I like to use a pastry brush too. What's good about the pastry brush is you're not wanting to build up too much flour here. Just enough to fully coat the surface, make sure it's thoroughly dried. You're not wanting any clumps. All right, right into the egg. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right into the nama panko. Give it a nice press. So then I take this extra nama panko, put it on top. Basically what I'm doing is I'm creating a bed for the second portion. Just working around the sides of it, the freed up nama panko. You're just pressing it onto the pork. This fresh panko adheres really well. Again, because of the moisture. Areas where it's easy to miss in the packing is on the sides. Every time I flip it, I take the excess panko and I scoot it to the side. That frees it up so I can pick it up and pack it back on. It's wild how much nama panko goes into each of these portions. So much moisture, so much surface area and crispy bits on here. Ready to fry? Here we go. When this is frying, it is very, very delicate at this point. It's not crispy yet. It's frying, the moisture's leaving, that's all the bubbles you're seeing. So this isn't something where you're gonna wanna get in there and allow your curiosity to run wild and look at it, move it around, trying to flip it. If you're doing that, you're just gonna be knocking off the breading on the outside. So just be patient. This should take around 3.5 minutes or so. You're gonna lift one up, temp it, see where we're at. Still a little under. So here we're frying for an internal temperature of 130, just about 55 degrees Celsius. Yeah, that might seem pretty low for pork, but we are accounting for there will be carryover in the cook as it rests here for a short period of time, just 1 minute. Lots of shops you'll find too in Japan, the pork is about medium. It's pretty rare looking, pretty pink in the middle, but I know that's not gonna fly with everybody here, so we're looking for it just to be cooked just all the way through, but super juicy still. Hit our target temperature. Now we're gonna come over here to our landing station. There we have it. They're all fried up, ready to go. We're gonna reset here, go head to the cutting board, season these up with our all-purpose umami seasoning, cut them up, we're ready to plate it. All right, it's comparison time. We have our classic versus the ultimate tonkatsu. So both of these are great, but let's look at the differences and compare them. First off, I'm gonna season them up. We got our all-purpose umami seasoning, salt, MSG, totally optional. Comparing these right off the bat, the classic, the surface area from the breading is just craggly beyond all get out. It's nuts. More surface area here. This just giant hunk is just fried really crispy on all sides. Look at that. Cooked perfectly. As you can tell, it's still juicy, still glossy, perfectly cooked pork, so much crust. All right, got the ultimate, the collar. It's a little pink. It's a nice steaky texture to it. There's so many muscle groups right here. We got crust on all sides, super nice. I wouldn't actually say one's the ultimate. If you want the pork to be the star, this is the ultimate version. But the classic, it's classic for a reason. Look at the breading, so much craggly texture. I can't think of another way of cooking where you're gonna find this much craggly bits. This classic, there's lots of crispy tender on this one with each bite. Kind of an extreme ratio of crust to meat. With the ultimate over here, it's juicy, it's succulent, it's really fatty and rich. This is kind of over the top. So one of them isn't more right than the other. This is like New York versus Tomahawk. Both are amazing, one's just over the top. So if you wanna make the classic, takes under an hour, we got the recipe for you. Or if you wanna go to the ultimate using our favorite cut of pork, ChefSteps.com, we got both recipes. Let's make tonkatsu. Not tenderloin, tender loins. Loin that's tender.
Subscribe to our channel and visit ChefSteps.com for more tips, recipes, guides, and tools to help you level up in the kitchen.